was crazy. I recorded this yesterday, and maybe I didn't press record. I don't know what happened. It didn't record. I couldn't find it in my gallery. I thought I found it, and I uploaded something. And then someone, shout out to you if you're seeing this. Well, how do you say it? Xenos or something? Commented, was like, I think you uploaded the wrong video. Something. And then I checked, and I was like, oh my god, this is the wrong video. Thank you for pointing that. I wouldn't have known. I really would have just gone on and not known. Because, yeah. Sometimes I don't watch my videos. Sometimes I do. But a lot of the time I don't. Just upload. I'm just not checking. Just scrubbing through just to make sure it's the right thing. Anyway, Bible study. Ecclesiastes chapter 2. Pleasures are meaningless. I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. But that also proved to be meaningless. Laughter, I said, is meaningless, is madness. And what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly, my mind still guiding me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during the few days of their lives. I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself and planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water groves of flourishing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasure of kings and provinces. I acquired male and female singers and a harem as well, the delights of a man's heart. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my labor, and this was the reward for all my toil. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done, and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. So this is King Solomon talking about how he seriously partook in pleasure. Like, he had all the sex he wanted, he had all the material stuff he wanted, he had big houses, slaves, singers. He's just living the life, right? Vineyards, planted vineyards, that's where you grow the grapes that you can make wine with and stuff like that. And he was living large, and yet when he looked at it all, he was like, this is meaningless. Like, what's the point? It's all material, and yet I still feel empty. You know, you hear stories of rich people killing themselves, people who have extraordinary lives. Maybe they're famous, maybe they're wealthy, they're traveling. They want for nothing, and yet they're deeply, deeply unhappy. You always hear stories of these very, very wealthy people killing themselves, and yet people that don't have money, they'll struggle, they'll go through life's hardships, but I don't think for most of them, the thought of killing themselves never crosses their mind. I'm from Zimbabwe. That's where I was born. I live in South Africa now. But at some point, Zimbabwe had the worst economy in the world. I'm not exaggerating. You can look it up. The worst economy in the world. Yet, when you meet Zimbabweans, it's some of the most cheerful people you meet, kind, nice. They work very, very hard, very well educated as well, despite the circumstances. And I don't think suicide is a big thing. Actually, let me Google. I'm sure there is suicide in Zim, but I wonder how much it is compared to other places. So suicide rate for 2019 was 14.10%. Was higher than South Africa, the neighboring country, which is a lot more wealthy than Zimbabwe. It's not even close, and yet they have a lower suicide rate. So suicide rates in America, the wealthiest nation in the world. Suicide rate. What's the suicide rate? Stop giving me all these funny numbers. So it's, I'm struggling to get like a hard number here. I think it's 14 point something, 14.04. Something like that. 14.9 deaths per every 100,000 people. So Zimbabwe is 14.10 in 2018. I don't know what it is in 2023. Has it gone up? I love how we're hung up on this. I'm supposed to be reading the Bible. I want to know. It's not updated because the highest it goes is like 2019. Well, in 2019, it was the same as the US. So one of the poorest nations in the world has, similar, I guess, similar suicide rates to America. The wealthiest nation in the world. That should tell you a lot. It's just not something you hear about in Zim, suicide. I'm sure it happens, but it's not a big thing in the culture. Whereas in America, it's, come on, countries like Japan, South Korea, so on and so forth, just have way more money, way more material wealth than countries like Zim, where people are just poor and there's a lot of disease and this and that, and yet there's something about the way they live. It's a very Christian nation as well as Zimbabwe. Like, a lot of people believe in God. And suicide is just not a thing. It's not a big thing, considering the circumstances. You'd think that everyone would just be offing themselves left, right, and center. So Solomon, he engages in all of this stuff, all the sex, drinking, buying property, yada, yada, yada. There's a big house and he's living large, and yet he's looking at it and he's like, meaningless. He says, wisdom and folly are meaningless. Then I turned my thoughts to consider wisdom and also madness and folly. What more can the king's successor do than what has already been done? I saw that wisdom is better than folly, just as light is better than darkness. The wise have eyes in their heads, while the fool walks in the darkness. But I came to realize that the same fate overtakes them both. Then I said to myself, the fate of the fool will overtake me also. What then do I gain by being wise? I said to myself, this too is meaningless, for the wise, like the fool, will not be long remembered. The days have already come when both have been forgotten. Like the fool, the wise too must die. That's crazy. So he's saying whether you're smart, whether you're stupid, whether you make good decisions, whether you make bad decisions, the same fate awaits us all. Everyone dies in the end. It makes you wonder what is the point of all this sort of stuff? You get someone like a Steve Jobs, who created the iPhone, who created Apple, the company. I'm sure there are a lot of kids who use iPhones and MacBooks and all this stuff, and they don't know who Steve Jobs is. I'm sure there's a significant amount of the global population that use his products and don't know who he is, even though he's late now. He passed away, but he started that company, revolutionary mind. I'm sure people don't know who he is. You have to think about a lot of the things we value, and you have to ask yourself, why do we value these things? We all die, whether you're pretty, ugly, strong, weak, tall, short, doesn't matter. Everyone heads toward the same place, which is the grave. It says here, toil is meaningless. So I hated life because the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. All of it is meaningless, chasing after the wind. I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun, because I must leave them to the one who comes after me. And who knows whether that person will be wise or foolish, yet they will have control over all the fruit of my toil into which I have poured my effort and skill under the sun. This too is meaningless. So my heart began to despair over all my toilsome labor under the sun. For a person may labor with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, and then they must leave all they own to another who has not toiled for it. This too is meaningless and a great misfortune. What do people get for all the toil and anxious striving with which they labor under the sun? All their days their work is grief and pain. Even at night their minds do not rest. This too is meaningless. A person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own toil. This too, I see, is from the hand of God. For without him, who can eat or find enjoyment? To the person who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. But to the sinner he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth, to hand it over to the one who pleases God. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. So all that work you put in, building a legacy, what does it mean? Like I talked about Steve Jobs earlier. Hold on. I talked about Steve Jobs. He dies and someone else inherits Apple. Now, I think Apple's doing well, but as it gets passed from hand to hand, I think the current owner is Tim Cook right now. You know, Tim Cook's I think he's doing a great job actually, in terms of how successful the brand is and the quality of products they're putting out. But who's Tim Cook going to pass the company on to? Who's that person going to pass the company on to? Will Apple always be recognized as this prestigious brand, or at some point, like pretty much everything else in life, will it fall away? You look at Disney and how it started and where it is now. Yeah. I don't think Walt Disney envisioned what Disney has become now. I don't think that was part of his plan. But then you look at how it's devolved and become degenerate, and the quality of the products they're putting out now, it's not great, right? And then Disney buys Marvel, and look what it does to Marvel. The Marvel comic books are not selling well at all. They used to sell millions of copies. Now they can't even crack 15,000, 20,000 copies. It's actually insane. The decline, the movies that they're putting out, like terrible, like just terrible movies. The same with DC. The same with a lot of things that people build with passion and they work hard, and then you pass away and someone else inherits this stuff, and you don't know, is this person going to be wise? Are they going to be foolish? You don't know. So what does it mean? You work. And at some point the earth will fall away. The sun will explode. The sun is a ticking time bomb. One day the sun is literally going to explode and destroy not just the earth, but the entire solar system, and probably beyond that as well. What will happen when the sun explodes? Okay, so Mercury, Venus, and Earth will definitely be destroyed, and then the other planets will just become colder. And then obviously the sun also keeps them in orbit, so now the sun's gravitational pull will be gone, so I think they'll just be spiraling in chaos, and then who knows what will happen after that. But yeah, the solar system will be done, and it'll be just, but that's like billions of years from now, right? When will the sun explode? When will the When will the sun explode? They estimate 2 to 3 billion years. But yeah, the point is, at some point, all of this will end, and everything will fall to nothing. So you really have to ask yourself, what's the point? What's the meaning in it? If everything you do will one day be rendered moot, meaningless, falls to oblivion, what's the point? I think it says here, to the person who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. Happiness. God gives everything meaning. God gives everything purpose. And he gives the people who pleases him wisdom, knowledge, happiness. He's the one that ties everything together. When you understand that there's more to life than physics and chemistry, that there's a realm beyond this realm, and everything is linked. There's a synergy. What you do here on this earthly realm starts to make more sense, because there's an eternal realm beyond it. So now your actions aren't meaningless. What you sow here, you can reap in heaven. The realm in which God lives, in the spirit. So these questions, these existential questions, what is the point, is answered through Christ, is answered through God. God is the point. He's the one that made us. He's the one that gives us meaning and direction. When you're living a life apart from your Creator, you're using things in the way they're not meant to be used. You see Solomon having all this sex. He has a harem in his house where he keeps all these women. So his wives, his concubines, his servants, his female servants. They stay in this harem, and obviously he goes in there and probably engages in all sorts of debauchery. Because he's living a godless lifestyle. He's living apart from his Creator. But then you understand that, okay, God had specific intentions for sex, and when you follow his directions, you experience the best version of that thing. So if Solomon had gotten married to one woman and loved that woman and had sex with that woman, he would be a happier man. He'd have a more meaningful life. You see all these playboys that run around sleeping with countless women, and they live that lifestyle, and then when it's time to settle down, you know, they've experienced all there is, and guys like that tend to find it very hard to settle down. They tend to find it very hard to be content. It's the paradox of choice. Once you've experienced so much and dibbled and dabbled in so many things, it's very, very difficult to settle down on one thing and be happy with that one thing. It's a psychological thing. You're comparing this particular experience to all the other experiences you've had, and there's this cognitive dissonance in your mind where you found a person you love, you're supposed to be happy, and yet you aren't, because there's this backlog. So that's just one example of manner in which you live a life apart from God, and everything just becomes meaningless. He gives everything meaning, he gives everything direction, he gives everything purpose. So your work, your love, your day-to-day activities, whether you're buying a home, whether you're planting a vineyard, whether you're going to school, whatever you're doing, he gives it meaning, and you find yourself more fulfilled, more happy. So I hope you can take that into consideration. There are a lot of people who lack meaning in this day and age, a lot of people who don't know what the fuck is going on. They feel like they have no purpose, they feel like they have no direction. Find God. Seek God, and the Bible says, seek the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you. Seek God first, and then everything else will start to make sense. So I hope you can do that, and yeah. Let me pray and get out of here. Dear God, thank you for this individual watching this right now. Thank you for making them whole, unique, and guiding them on a path towards peace, prosperity, and purpose. Thank you for blessing this individual with wonderful people who love them and take care of them and bring the best out of them, and that you're maintaining the people that are there as well, so they can also love and take care of this individual. Thank you for blessing this individual with a spirit of gratitude so they can give thanks for all the wonderful things in their life, and just be aware of all the wonderful things in their life, and through giving thanks attract even more blessings. Find peace and contentment as well. Let your presence be felt in this person's life so that they know that you're God, that you're real, that you love them, and then you can guide them as well. Good health, long life, and happiness over this individual and everyone they care about. You might know I praise you, love you. Amen.